Hello everyone, and welcome to our discussion on transferring your accounting information into Design Manager. My name is Brad, and I'll be hosting the demonstration today. If you have questions during the webinar, feel free to enter them into the questions pane on your GoToWebinar panel. If the question is outside of the scope of today's discussion, please email them to support@designmanager.com. Lastly, if you miss a portion of the webinar or want to review any of our past discussions, you can go to our Help Center at knowledge.designmanager.com. Click on the Webinars menu, then go down to Recorded Webinars, and you can see any of our recent past discussions. You can also go to our YouTube channel at Design Manager Inc., Design Manager INC, and here you can review any of our past webinars or tutorials at your leisure. Today's webinar will be solely focused on reproducing the account balances and pertinent information from your previous accounting software into Design Manager. And I'll be focusing on Design Manager Cloud for the discussion, as the process is the exact same in Design Manager Professional Cloud, but I'll show where necessary functions are located in both platforms, of course. Now, there are a few considerations, very important considerations, to review before preparing to transfer our accounting information. And here they are. First, we must choose a solid fixed date for the migration to occur. All of our entries today will occur on or prior to that date. In our demonstration, we'll be using August 1st of this year as the date that we'll begin using our Design Manager. So any transactions necessary to replicate the information from the previous system must be before 8/1 or 7/31 or before. Any new accounting activity must be entered into Design Manager rather than the prior system and must be dated after our migration date. So of course, any new accounting that comes in, you want to put into your new system and you want to date it after the migration date, which makes sense. Accounting reports in Design Manager will be accurate from that migration date forward, but will lack detailed information when run from any date prior to the move. So you'll need to research such information in the previous system if the need arises. What's the ultimate goal? Well, the ultimate goal is to have all the account balances in Design Manager match the account balances in the former system and any necessary particular accounting information to be visible and usable as well. Now that we've reviewed all the overall considerations of the accounting migration, we're also going to require a variety of information from your previous accounting system as well. Such information includes a list of all of your active clients. And this is a list of all the clients and their billing addresses, phone numbers, etc., with whom you're currently conducting business. These would be clients with existing orders or outstanding deposits, unpaid invoices, and other credits, etc. Older clients can be added or imported in the future as necessary. And notice, I did say imported. Design Manager allows you to import a list of clients if you have them stored in an Excel file or spreadsheet or even a text file. And to do so, you go to File, Import, and right here, you can import your clients. For our professional users, very similarly, File, Import, Import from File, and there's our client option. So Design Manager really makes it easy to get a list of your clients into the program as quickly as possible. What else do we need from the prior system? Well, we need a list of open deposits that you've received from clients but have not yet applied to an invoice. So this is going to be a list of all of the deposits or retainers that you've collected but which you've not yet completed the work. Most importantly, you didn't invoice the client and utilize, or as we call it, apply the deposit. For example, say you gave the client an estimate for $10,000 for some merchandise and services, and they gave you a 25% deposit of $2,500, so you can begin ordering, etc. Now this $2,500 is an open deposit because you've not yet applied it to the invoice, that $10,000 invoice, and that $2,500 would reduce the balance due to $7,500. So that $2,500 is an open deposit or retainer. We also need a list of all of your outstanding client invoices. This is a list of all the invoices that we've sent to our clients for which we've not yet received payment. This is also called or known as your aged accounts receivable or your open accounts receivable. On the flip side, we also need a list of all the bills or deposits that we've received from vendors and entered in your prior accounting system but have not yet paid. This is also called an aged or open accounts payable. If you have bills that you have not entered into the prior system, well, of course, you would then want to enter them into Design Manager after the transfer date. What else? We also need a list of all of the checks or payments from your clients and checks or payments to your vendors and bank deposits that have not cleared your bank statement. This list should include all the checks you've written or online payments or debit card purchases, etc., and the deposits that you've placed into the banking institution that are not yet appear on the most recent statement from the bank. If you have multiple checking or banking accounts, you're going to need a separate list for each account. It's a very, very good idea to have your last bank statement or statements handy during this process. Finally, we need a list of all of your accounts and their balances, which is often referred to as a trial balance, as of the date when we're going to be switching to Design Manager. So essentially, it's going to be a list of all of your accounts from your old system's general ledger and the amount in that account as of the date we're going to switch over to Design Manager. Speaking of trial balances, let's take a look at them. So I have a trial balance as of the end of this month, and you can see it has all of my accounts and their balances, and at the bottom it's going to show us our net debits and credits, which are always aligned or in balance as they call it. Now if we look at Design Manager and we run a trial balance, to do so we go to our reports. Our financial statements are under our general ledger folder. We can see financial statements, but the trial balance is right at the bottom of that folder. Now, for a lot of the reports that we're going to be utilizing multiple times today, I've used the Add to Favorites option, which puts it on my Favorites tab so we can access our trial balance, for example, quite easily. And if we run our trial balance for the same period ending, in other words, the end of this month, we're going to see all of our accounts that are currently in Design Manager. And of course, as we'd imagine, all of the balances are zero. And if we compare the two, we're going to see obviously some differences between the two trial balances. So we can see on our previous system's trial balance, we have a Bank of America checking, while in Design Manager, that's simply called cash checking. And we can see we have other accounts like a savings account, petty cash account, and some others that are not yet input into Design Manager. So how do we handle that situation? Very easily. To add or edit accounts, we're going to go to our account glossary in Design Manager. And to do so, we go to Glossaries, Accounts, and here we can see our account glossary or chart of accounts, which matches up to our trial balance, of course. For our professional users, you would go under your Accounting tab, General Ledger Frame, and you can see your button for Accounts, and there it is. And at this point, the two programs are very similar. So first, let's change our cash checking to Bank of America checking to make it match our previous trial balance as closely as possible. So we can simply highlight it on our account glossary and hit the edit button, or I could just double click and change the name, Bank of America. There we go. And we also had certain accounts that are not yet in Design Manager where we're going to need them because they have balances in our previous system, such as our Bank of America savings account. So to create a new account, rather than editing, we're going to click the Add button. We'll keep our numbering system the exact same, as I liked the numbering system in our previous accounting package because it had our assets in the 10,000 range, which is very traditional according to GAAP accounting. So we'll use the same unique account number, Bank of America, savings. And now I just need to designate the account type. And this would be not just an asset, which is traditional for our banking accounts, but a specialized asset bank checking. This designation allows us to use this account to record funds into, write checks out of, perform reconciliations, etc. So we'll select our asset bank checking, and additional options for bank number and checking number arise. Then there's a totally optional there just for your usage only. And if we click OK, Design Manager conveniently asks us to create what we call a payment type. This is a designation when we're entering in our receipts from our clients that allows us to easily direct funds into this particular account. So we might as well go ahead and make one by clicking yes. And that brings up our cash receipt payment type window, where I could type in something very easy like savings. So I can just select my savings payment type, and Design Manager will automatically know that those funds go into my savings account. I have options where I can require the deposit to first go into undeposited funds. At that point, when I'm truly ready to go to the banking institution and make a deposit, I'd process a deposit slip. And I also have an option to run the credit card using merchantware. If you've created an account with our preferred credit card processing partner, Cayenne, you can actually process your client's credit cards through Design Manager using Cayenne's merchantware system. And this option would indicate that this is one of the accounts to utilize for. But we'll just go ahead and leave it traditionally configured. And there's our Bank of America savings account. We have a few more accounts to quickly add. We have a petty cash account. So we'll quickly add that. 10,030 petty cash. We'll make that an asset bank checking as well. But we'll skip the process of making a payment type just to keep ourselves running along smoothly. And finally, I can see that we have two accounts, a general sales or revenue account and a general cost of goods sold account that I do not have listed in Design Manager. So let's add those as well. Our general sales would be 41,000 if we're keeping with our numbering scheme from our previous system. General sales. And this would be a revenue account. And now I'm going to use my OK Add feature, which is going to save this account, but keep my account window up so I can quickly add another account. And we'll pop in our general cost of goods sold, and that's a cost of goods sold account. Click OK now, and we can see there's that general cost of goods sold that I created, but I also have my general sales account as well. Now, always before this process, I've entered the accounts that I can see necessary between my original trial balance and my Design Manager version, but be sure to check with your accounting professional that all the accounts that you have listed are going to be ones that he or she finds necessary, or if there's any new ones that they want added, this would be a perfect time to do so. Okay, now we've got the accounts we need, but eventually we're going to need to get those balances in that we saw on our trial balance, all of the amounts and values that each of the accounts are currently maintaining. And we're going to enter most of those using a journal entry, but a few select accounts must be handled differently, and they are as follows. Our accounts receivable account, our accounts payable account, and our client deposit account. Now, some of you who may be paying close attention may ask why vendor deposits aren't one of the special accounts that we need to handle differently. And it's a very astute observation, but we're actually going to address that towards the end of the discussion. We'll see how I handle that particular specialized account. So let's begin with our accounts receivable. Recall that there are some particular reports or lists that we needed from our previous accounting platform, and one of them was our accounts receivable report, or our aged accounts receivable report. And I have one very simple example listed here. I simply have, remember, this is a list of all of the open invoices from our clients. In other words, invoices we've sent to the client for which they have not yet paid in full. And I have a very simple example here where I have one such invoice for each of our clients, the Carters and the Hilsons. And notice that total of $13,128.98 should match our trial balance from our previous system. And we can see that it does. So to enter our aged accounts receivable properly in Design Manager, we're going to need to enter both a client and a project for each of our clients listed on our aged accounts receivable report from the prior system. And here's how we do so. In Design Manager Cloud, we go to Glossaries, Clients, and we can see I've already created the clients just to keep our discussion running quickly today. From our clients, each client has one or more projects that we can see in our project and specifications window. Again, I've already created these. In our professional platform, you would access your client glossary under your project tab, lists and glossaries, clients, and there's our client glossary. And for our projects, stay on your project tab in your management frame and click your projects window. If you need help entering or creating your first client or projects, you can always go to our help system, accessed by the question mark in blue in the program itself, or you can always go to our help center or our YouTube channel at Design Manager Inc. And you can watch, for example, entering a project, a very short tutorial that describes the process quickly and accurately for you to really help you along. So once that we have our clients created or imported, as I referred to before, and the necessary projects created, we need to make an item or specification or a placeholder for our invoice in each of the projects. In Design Manager Cloud, we do that from the Project and Specifications window, and our professional users would go to the Project Specifications button or window on the Project tab, put in your particular project, and create an item. Again, creating items are also described in detail in nice, concise tutorials on our YouTube channel. So what we're going to do is make an item that's going to represent the balance of our invoice for each of our projects. So we can see for the Carters, we have an open invoice of $11,000, $11,973.70. So I'm going to create a new item by highlighting my project and clicking the new item button. And for the description, this will be something very simple like old invoice, and I'll put the number in from the previous system so I can cross-reference. And then to input the value of the original invoice, I'm going to click the Add button to get to our component window. Now, be sure, I don't want to charge tax here. The aged accounts receivable report is showing us the total value of that invoice, and that's already including tax. We'll handle our tax that we owe to our tax authorities down the road of this discussion in a little bit. So we're going to uncheck the taxable designation, and we can just input our $11,973.70. Click OK. OK again. And there's our item that we're going to use to handle our receivable for the Carters. And we'll do the same thing for the Hilsons. Just going to click on the Hilson project, click New Item, old invoice number 21601. Click my Add button as designated by the green plus sign, remove my taxable designation, and I'll put in the entire amount of the outstanding invoice from the Hilsons, 115528. Click OK, and there are our two items very easily made. Now that's the items themselves. It's not yet really holding our accounts receivable. To do so, we're going to make an actual invoice for each of these items, and that will become our accounts receivable in Design Manager. So I can jump over to my documents in accounting, or I could use my documents in accounting quick jump and get right to my Carter residence. To make that client invoice, I just click the client invoice button, which shows the only item that we have, obviously, for the Carters is that one we just created for the old invoice. What we'll do, let's put the date back on 6/14 to match the original. And in Design Manager, you can just type the month and the date. Design Manager will automatically format that to the current year, or you could use your date search and select the appropriate day as well. TX description, transaction description are entirely optional. I highly recommend them as I find them very convenient when I'm researching information that I may have entered months or even years prior. And this could be simple as old invoice number 21525, essentially what we're putting on the invoice itself. Select or tag our item. Notice that the balance due is the exact amount of the AR. There is no tax. Click OK. We have our modern format configured. And there we go. There's our item. And now our balance due is matching exactly what the previous accounting package did as well. In Design Manager, once we've reviewed the invoice, we want to close the print preview and accept it to truly process that invoice, and there it is. And now in Design Manager, that's invoice 10,000, but we have a nice cross-reference with our transaction description if we ever need to refer back to the older software. And then we'll do the exact same thing for the Hilsons. Click their project, client invoice. We'll change the date back to 6/20. Old invoice, and this was number 21601. Select or tag our item. Click OK. Preview and generate our invoice, and accept. So we've made our clients, our projects, a single item to represent the invoice. If you have multiple open invoices for your particular project, you can add each one individually as separate items, or some people just consolidate them into one big open receivable as well. I prefer having separate ones, separate items and separate invoices in Design Manager to really match your older software with as much accuracy as possible. Now, as I talked about sales tax briefly, once we do our final transfer, we're going to have the appropriate amount owed to the tax authority or authorities, but you're going to need to reference your sales tax report in that prior system to get your taxable amounts, non-taxable amounts, etc. You'll be able to pay your sales tax through Design Manager, but that detail is still stored in the prior package. And if we look in Design Manager now, let's go to our reports. Under accounts receivable folder, the very first entry is aged accounts receivable, which of course I've attached to my favorites. And if we run that, we can see we have two entries, one for the Carters for 11,973.70 and one for the Hilsons for 1155.28 for a total of 13,128.98. And that matches our previous accounts receivable report exactly. Great, so that's our open invoices now brought over into Design Manager into a very usable manner. So let's move on to the next area. This is going to be those open client deposits. So I've got my list from my previous system, and I have a very simple example. I just have one deposit from the Carters for a total of $6,398.20, which of course that amount should match my trial balance. Client deposits are actually liabilities in accrual accounting, and we can see it right under our 23,000 account. There is our $6,398.20. So let's go ahead and get that value into Design Manager. Now here, again, if there are clients on this list that weren't on our aged accounts receivable, we need to create a client and a project for them in Design Manager. Again, you can use your import feature to get those clients in very easily. We already have a client and project for the Carters, so that process is done for us. In this case, though, we're going to be creating a retainer for each of the clients on our list. And to do that, we go back to our Documents in Accounting, highlight the Carters, and click on Cash Receipt button. For our professional users, under your Accounting, we can see our Accounts Receivable. That's where we go for our client invoices. Cash Receipts, however, a few buttons down, and we go ahead and click Add, and put in the Carters, and we're ready to go to input our retainer. Very similar between the two platforms. Now, when entering in our cash receipt, we always want to enter the amount first, and in this case, that's going to be our $6,398.20. The payment method really doesn't matter in this case. Let's imagine they gave us a check. If we had the check number, might as well enter it. Great. We can change the date back to the original date, and that was 6/1. Again, notice just the month and the day. If I tab out, Design Manager formats that for me. And then, as I said, we're going to enter this as a retainer. So on my top grid for deposits and retainers, I want to keep the top line, or the only line at this point, highlighted. And I need to tell Design Manager how much of the retainers coming in by using the Edit button as indicated by the pencil icon. And I'm going to input our $63.98 here as well. And for a transaction description, let's just use outstanding client deposit. Now, by entering all of these funds as retainers, we can manually apply these to invoices down the road. We can move retainers to deposit proposals when proposals are created in the system. The retainer gives us that nice flexibility that's really desirable at this stage early into Design Manager. And now if we select or tag our retainer, we can see that we have one retainer amount coming in. Our total receipt matches with a difference of 0. That's ideal. And if we click OK, we can see a retainer entry right beneath our project, the original date, the amount, the check number, our convenient transaction description. And we can even run a client deposit report. Back to our reports, open client deposits are also under Accounts Receivable folder, and we can see it right there. And of course, I've attached that to my favorites. And if we run it for the same time frame, we're going to have a single entry dated June 1st, retainer, $63.98.20, which matches our previous open client deposit precisely. So we're making some quick progress here. If you have multiple deposit entries for clients, very similar to the open accounts receivable, you can enter all of those open deposits as a single retainer, or you can make individual retainers for each one. Design Manager will let you utilize them in the exact same manner, and it doesn't really care which model you want to use. Again, I probably would enter them all as individual retainers because I really like to have my reports match the previous accounting package with as much accuracy as possible. And that brings us to the other side of the coin, our accounts payable. These are going to be all of the bills we've entered into our previous accounting system that we've not yet either written a check or otherwise paid online, etc. So that would be our aged accounts payable report. And again, I have a very simple example with just a few vendors that I still need to remit payment. Just like we had to enter our clients and projects in order to input our aged accounts receivable and open client deposits, we'd obviously need a vendor for each of the vendors on our aged accounts payable list. Just like clients, vendors can also be imported using the import feature right there. Just like our clients, I've already created our vendors to keep us on point here. And if we go to our Documents and Accounting window, Vendor tab, we can see a few vendors that I've already made, particularly the 3 on our aged accounts payable report. Also, you of course can go to our help center and our YouTube channel to see how to enter a vendor if you need some help there as well, or use our internal help system also. Remember here that the detail of these purchases is going to remain in the old system. We're simply going to enter the total balance due for each vendor, even if it's a few different invoices. It will be handy to have the original vendor invoice number or numbers from the previous system so we can cross-reference if necessary, but again, that's not 100% required by any means. And we're going to put all of those balance dues to the vendors in as operating expenses. And we'll begin with America's Mattress. So I simply highlight them on my Documents and Accounting window and click Expense or Bill. For our Pro Cloud users, very easy. You stay on your Accounting tab, but go under your Accounts Payable frame, go to Bills and Invoices. On your new tab, click Add, Expense, and you're ready to go. So for our America's Mattress, we have a single bill outstanding with them. So let's put the original, let's use, I don't know, perhaps the PO number from the prior system, the original date, transaction description, oops, pardon me. This is going to be our invoice, ZE 19877, and this was on 6/10. Invoice for accounts payable is a fantastic description. Copy that. Click our Add button. What this is going to allow us to do is tell what is the total amount, which is going to be our $12.50, as we can see. And we also need to put it in an account. Now, technically, it doesn't matter what account we're going to use because, as I said a little while back, that we're going to ultimately put the account balances in for the majority of the accounts using a journal entry. But I really like to get as much of the information in accurately as I can. So let's imagine that this purchase for America's Mattress was for furniture. So I can use my furniture cost of goods sold account. Perfect. Click OK. And I'm ready to go. And there is our outstanding invoice for America's Mattress. And I can do the same for Baker. Use our expense. Make sure I get my invoice number correct this time. And this was on 7/13. I've already copied my transaction description. We'll use our furniture cost of goods sold account again. And this was $14.50. I can use my OK Add again. Allows me to quickly save my entry for Baker and keep my vendor operating expense window up. And we'll put our FedEx invoice in. This was back on 6/15, invoice for AP. And this isn't a cost of goods sold, but let's say it's an expense for perhaps postage or shipping or something along those lines. Perfect. We'll use our postage expense account, and that was $55. And now by clicking OK, there is our FedEx entry, but I've also saved my expense for Baker as well. The OK Add really allows you to process and input those transactions very rapidly. And since they are unpaid bills, on our Pay Bills and Checkbook window, we can see them listed for us. So we can actually go ahead and generate checks for them when they're ready, or indicate they've been paid online, or even if they've been paid via credit card, etc. And this listing on our Pay Bills, Print Checks window matches our current accounts payable report, which would be found under accounts payable, aged accounts payable. Put it on our favorites, of course. And if we look here, we're going to see our 3 entries. $12.50 for America's Mattress, $14.50 for Baker, $55 for FedEx, for a total of $27.55, which matches our aged accounts payable report precisely. That takes care of 3 of our big important accounts: our accounts receivable account, all the unpaid invoices from our clients, our open client deposits, which is all those funds we've received from our clients and have not yet applied to invoices, and all the bills and deposits we may have, or pardon me, the bills and expenses we have from our vendors that we have not yet remitted payment, or our accounts payable account. So if you recall, we have one more set of entries. This is a list of all those outstanding checks and deposits that we have, that we've created, processed, but are not yet on our last bank statement. Let's imagine that we have a check that we sent to one of our workroom, curtain call workroom, and we've created the check, sent it, but it's not on our statement. We need to put those entries in as an operating expense and indicate the payment of the check. So when we're ready to do our first checking reconciliation, Design Manager will have those entries for us. So very similarly to our accounts payable input, we go back to our documents in accounting, jump to our vendor view. There's our curtain calls. So we'll hit our expense. Again, for our pro users, same way as before, stay in your accounts payable frame, bills and invoices, add expense, and you can put in the information just as we're doing on our Design Manager Cloud. Invoice number, this was our Hilson, one of our old purchase order numbers. This invoice date, 7/16, obviously was a few days ago, so I can imagine that the check hasn't cleared our statement yet. Transaction description, let's use uncleared check to differentiate from our accounts payable transactions. Click our add button. Let's say a curtain calls is doing a window treatment for us, so I'm gonna track down our window treatment cost of goods sold account. There it is, 5,500, and the total amount, $27.34.25. Click OK. Now, only difference here from our accounts payable input was we want to indicate that we do have that check out there, and we can use our Pay Now or Hand Check button to input that information. Let's say that we wrote a check. Of course, I'd have my check number, put one in there. Let's say the date of the check was the same as the invoice itself, our Bank of America checking, and transaction uncleared check again. Click OK. And now when we click OK to save our expense, we can see it listed nicely, but there's a check beneath it as well. So if we look in our checking window, we don't see it listed with our unpaid invoices, but we do see it on our checkbook. So for those checks, let's call them in transit since your last statement, they would be input with both an operating expense and the check itself. Very similarly, we may have some deposits. We went to our bank or made transfers of those types of things that are in transit but not showing on our statement yet. Those need to put into Design Manager as well so we can go through that reconciliation process with ease. We're going to put those in as what we call miscellaneous cash receipts. So in Design Manager Cloud, that would of course be done on your Documents and Accounting window, but we jump over to the Journal Entries and Miscellaneous Cash Receipt view. And from here, we just click the Cash Receipt button, and you can see the Miscellaneous Cash Receipt window. For our Pro Cloud users, you're going to get back on your Accounts Receivable frame under your Accounting tab, back to Cash Receipts, but you would use the Add Miscellaneous button. And you can see from here, the windows are identical. So let's say we have a deposit back on 7/16, let's imagine. Payment type doesn't really matter. check number. If it's a single deposit, you could put that in, entirely optional. Let's imagine that ours is multiple entries, totally fine. The name, let's think of this more as a description. Let's just call it outstanding deposit. We'll put that as our transaction description as well. Let's say that it was $2,500 total. Now the offset account. This is usually indicating what represents or what is the source of these funds in a traditional cash receipt. Now we're just trying to get the information into Design Manager. I suggest using the retained earnings account. You'll of course correct that when we're done with the journal entry, but it's a good place to start. Retained earnings are generally equity accounts, and they're usually in the 30,000 range. And we can see our retained earnings right there. Great. And now we have another deposit on 7/18, so let's save our 7/16 deposit and get ready for our next entry, again using that OK add. 7/18, outstanding deposit. Say the amount here was $12,1435. Transaction description, and we'll use our retained earnings account as well. Click OK, and now we can see there's our two outstanding deposits. Now those are going to come in ideally on our next statement, and we'll have them listed so we can reconcile them. Now, one more entry. We're going to need to make another miscellaneous cash receipt for the current statement balance for the account. So as I said way back at the beginning of our discussion, you're going to have your most recent bank statements. You want to input the current statement balance of the account, in this case, our Bank of America. So let's do one final miscellaneous cash receipt. I like to use the first day of the first day of the converted month, which would be 7/1. So it's going to be the first entry on my checkbook. Let's have the name here something different, like statement balance perhaps. Sounds great. Put that as our transaction description as well. And I can pull off the amount right off my statement from the bank, $10,482.83. And again, I can use the retained earnings, which is just fine. Click OK, and now we're ready to go. So we have the statement balance, which represents the history of all of our previous transactions in one consolidated figure, and the amounts that are still in transit. Now we can see those over in our checkbook as well, of course, and there they are. So we can see our deposit coming in, our original bank statement, outstanding checks, and outstanding deposits. That gives us a balance of $17,861.13. Well, if we go back to our trial balance, what's our Bank of America checking? $17,861.13. So by following these steps, adhering to them just as I'm describing, you're going to have all of your account balance in properly and the necessary transactions, like our outstanding checks and deposits, ready for future use. And it matches the old system precisely. Okay, those are all quote unquote the harder accounts. And even that, it's really just manually entering in the information. And once you get yourself going, it does go quite quickly. But now we want to get all the other account balances into Design Manager as of that migration date. And as I said before, we're going to use that journal entry to do so. Journal entries are used to manually manipulate the account balances, and they really should be used with care or under the direction of your accounting professional. But this is a perfect scenario where one comes in quite handy. And they are input in Design Manager Cloud under our Documents and Accounting, Journal Entries, and Miscellaneous Cash Receipt view. So all we have to do is click our Journal Entry button, and we're going to be ready to go. For Pro Cloud users, you access your journal entries by staying on your Accounting tab, going under your General Ledger frame, Journal Entries button, and you click Add to begin processing or inputting your journal entry. Now, what we need to do in this case is we need to review our current trial balance in Design Manager versus our previous package's trial balance and put in the proper amounts to make the Design Manager one match precisely. What do I mean by that? Well, let's get our trial balance in Design Manager up. Okay, and we can see some of our accounts are already finished, checking accounts receivable, accounts payable, etc. But we have lots of other transactions or account balances to enter. So first, we want to get our savings account in. If there's nothing in transit, checks or deposits, we can use a journal entry to put that in. Slide this guy over a little bit. In our journal entry window, it always creates an entry number for you, but you could change that if you have a unique system yourself, or something just like opening BL for opening balance is fine. I'm going to use the last day before our migration date of 8/1, so we'll do 7/31, and the description would just be opening balances. To start inputting the information, click our add button as indicated by the green plus sign, and start putting in our accounts. So for our savings account, we would be debiting. Debits are on the left, credits are on the right. So this would be a debit of $48.58.35. And there we go. Same with petty cash. We have the account, but we don't have no current balance in it. So we can do OK add. There's our petty cash. And again, we'd be debiting, in this case, of $450, and so on. Now, some of the other examples, let's say sales tax. Here is our current sales tax collected. We want to input that. So that would be our sales tax account, and this would be a credit. Notice it's on the right-hand side, and that means it's a credit of $1424.90. And as we input debits and credits, we can see the total balance between the two going back and forth. If we look at something like our retained earnings, we can see currently, as we've already been using that account to put our cash receipts in, we have a credit balance of $14,197.18 in Design Manager, but over in our original trial balance, it's a debit of $2,000. So here's where the math gets a little tricky. If we want to convert that credit balance into a debit balance, we need to add the $2,000 to the $14,000. So I need to make a debit of $16,000. So I'm basically blanking out the credit and still putting an additional $2,000 in the debit. So that would be $16,197.18. And as another more complicated example, let's say that we have our furniture already indicated as a revenue account in Design Manager, but it really, in our previous system, has a balance of $21,066.50. We have $13,128.98 as a credit. Since it's already a credit balance, we need the difference between the two. So I need to see how much more I need to add to my $13,128.92 to get it to the $21,066 and change. So in that case, I would add an additional credit of $7,937.52, and so on. So we need to go through all of these. Now, this would take us a little bit of time to go through all of the accounts. So what I did is I've already crafted them. Now, if we look at my future Design Manager, under our journal entries, we can see there's our opening balances. And here I've entered all of them in. And you can see that net debits and credits is 0. And after doing so, if I run our trial balance, all of our account balances are in. And lo and behold, if we look at our debit and credit totals, which match, which of course they should, they also match our previous system of 56,467.86, and that matches perfectly. So if we follow those steps precisely, just like that, we have all of our information in Design Manager, and we're ready to utilize Design Manager to its fullest. Now, before we end today, I want to point out a few common scenarios that may arise in this initial transitional period. Okay, one very common question we get in our technical support department is, hey, I just got a bill from a vendor that is utilizing some vendor deposit that I've had before. Now notice I entered the vendor deposits in as a journal entry, part of that big journal entry. So I have deposits out there of $560. Well, let's imagine we get the bill back from the vendor, and that vendor used the $560. So how do we input that? Very easily. What we would do, just like we were putting our operating expenses in for our accounts payable transactions, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to record that bill as an operating expense. So let's imagine that we got a bill back from Baker. Put that in as an operating expense. Invoice number, whatever the number is from the vendor. Let's imagine that this is a few days back. Transaction description, final bill, commit deposit. I want to input the total amount of the bill prior to the application of the deposit. So let's imagine that the all the furniture was $11.20, let's say. So I'd put a portion of that in on my furniture cost of goods sold account, and I put that total bill amount in. Well, now it's saying that I owe $11.20. I don't owe $11.20. They applied that deposit. So I want to indicate that by adding a second transaction using my vendor deposit asset account, but I'm going to put that in as a negative, minus $560. What does that do? Well, one, it brings my amount due down by half to $560, which is what the balance says on my invoice. And when I click OK, I just alleviated or used that deposit. So if we look at our trial balance now, our vendor deposit account is now clear. So that negative reduces that vendor deposit that we've been using out there. That's why we don't have to worry about vendor deposits like we do with some of those other accounts, as they can be handled very easily when we're inputting those transitional invoices. And another question that comes up is sales tax time. Okay, we have to pay our tax authorities. As I said before, you're going to need to get the detail, taxable amounts, non-taxable amounts, etc., from use tax, those types of things, from the previous months from your prior system. But we've already input the amount of sales tax that we currently owe. So if we figure out that for quarter two, for example, we owe, I don't know, $824.90 in sales tax, we can input that. All we have to do, back in our documents in accounting, we're going to make an operating expense for our tax authority or authorities. And I've created one for New Jersey as an example. I'd make another expense. Invoice number, it doesn't really matter. How about 2017 second quarter? Date, transaction description we'll use as the invoice as well. And here, I'm going to use my sales tax collected account. How did that just appear there? Well, one of the things I did on my New Jersey Department of Revenue vendor, on that vendor payee window, there's a very convenient default account on the defaults tab. called our expense account default. That ensures that whenever I use this vendor, I'm going to be selecting the proper account. I don't have to worry about what account to use. Very handy in the cases of sales tax and those types of things. So I don't have to find the account each time. I've already got it configured for myself. Then I just need to put in the amount that I'm paying, and I said $824.90. And I can even indicate that I don't know, let's say I wired the money over. Checking account, and I'm good to go. And there's my payment to New Jersey Department of Revenue, and there's the electronic transfer as well, right beneath it, indicating a reduction in that checking account. So if we look at our trial balance now, we can see that our sales tax has gone down by that amount. So now we're just working on our third quarter sales tax would be the balance in here. And we can see on our checkbook, there is our payment to New Jersey Department of Revenue as well. Very easy. Two common areas that get people a little stumped sometimes in this transitional period, using vendor deposits and paying your sales tax. But as I showed, very easy to handle. Hey, and just like that, you're ready to use Design Manager to its fullest potential, and all of your account balances and outstanding accounting transactions are entered properly, accurately, and ready to go. And I really thank all of you for joining the discussion today. I hope you attend another one of our free webinars in the near future. And with that, take care and have a really great day.